friends, welcome back to the Infinite Library, and today we're going to be doing my November wrap-up, which thankfully is going to be much shorter than my September and October wrap-up. If you remember, I didn't record my September wrap-up when I should have, so I had to combine the two, and that was a really long video, so I'm going to try and keep this shorter. Editing, Kyle is probably going to say it's still not short, but hopefully we're not going to have as much to get through in this video. So in the month of November, a lot of what I was reading was because I was going to Yelk. So I read a lot of stuff. I also kind of dropped a lot of stuff because I just didn't have time to either finish them or they just weren't working for me at the time. So I have a very mixed bag of books to go through. So first, let's go through the stats of what I read this month. I did read 10 books. I actually completed. I still have one ongoing and I DNF'd 5 books. Although I will say 2 of those are very soft DNFs in that I'm going to go back to them at a later point. It just was not the right time for them right now. Pages read, I read 4,157 pages, which is about standard, to be honest. That's slightly more than I actually read in October, which is quite funny. Both October and November have not been like great reading months for me, to be honest, in terms of completion. Format wise, I read 11 physically, 4 via audio and 1 tandem. So that is like kind of like a mix of physical and audio, which was the implications actually, which I actually talked about in last month's video because I finished it so basically like right after I filmed that. So I'm actually not going to talk about the invocations in this video, even though I did technically finish it in November. You can go and watch the other video if you want to hear my thoughts about the invocations. Genre wise, I read 7 horror, still very much in my horror era, I think, this month. 4 fantasy, of which 3 were YA and 1 was adult. 2 non-fiction, 1 sci-fi, 1 historical and 1 romance. And then the source, where I got them from, I got 8 from the library, 6 I bought, and 2 were from my existing TBR. So not amazing in terms of buying books there, but a lot of the books were bought for specific like projects. So the star rating, then I had no 1 or 2 stars. I think it's the first month in a while that I've not had any 2 stars, which is nice. I had 4 3 stars, 5 4 stars, and 1 5 star. And I had 5 DNFs, although 2 of them, as I said, were soft DNFs. I'm just putting them aside for now. I will get back to them. It does give me an average rating of 3.9, which is slightly higher than October, but I just had more 4 stars, I think, this month. Only 1 5 star, which is the book that is the implications. So I'm not even going to talk about it in this video. So I'm literally only going to be talking to you about 3 and 4 stars in this video, which is quite funny. So those are the stats. Now getting into the actual books themselves, I am just going to talk about these in the order that I read them because it's easiest. I'll start with the DNFs just to get them out of the way. I will also mention I am currently still reading this book, Welcome to Dolly Hall by Alison Greaves. I'm about halfway through. I started this on the way to Yelk and I've just not had time to finish it. I am quite enjoying it though. I can see this being a 4 star. You know what? I'll tell you about it in December because this is a hard one to talk about. But it is a kind of dark academia queer book that deals a lot with identity and feminization, essentially. But yeah, not finished this one. We'll hopefully finish it in December if I can get to it around my other books. The other books I DNF'd, I did DNF 1 book that was from the humour category for Goodreads. That was Sure I'll Join Your Cult by Maria Bamford. I got maybe 20 pages into that. Hated the writing style, DNF'd it. I rarely ever read a book that I have like that visceral reaction to. I think I had that with Jessica as well, but yeah, didn't work for me, dropped it. The other books I DNF'd, I actually have one here, did unfortunately also DNF Mina and the Undead by Amy McCall. This is one of the Yelk authors. I really thought this was going to be perfect for me. It's very Buffy inspired, it's set in the 90s, it's obviously got stuff to do with murder mysteries and vampires and stuff. I just didn't really like it. I just wasn't getting invested at all in the characters. Yeah, I got maybe about 100 pages in before I just gave up and was like, this isn't for me, unfortunately. So really sad because I really wanted to love this. I know this has like a lot of popularity and people really like it, but I just didn't work for me, unfortunately. I also thought the romance tropes in it were like really not written well. So yeah, sadly a DNF. I also DNF'd another YA, but this was a romantasy, however, and that is The Bell Witches by Lindsay Kelk. This is a sad DNF on my part, because I really didn't want to DNF this one. I got 200 pages into this. I was doing it by an audiobook because it was on BookBeat, and I was thoroughly enjoying this for like a good portion of the book. And then the romance happened, and I have never read cringier, awful dialogue, romance tropes, situations happening. I just hated it. And it's really sad because I was enjoying the main storyline of the book so much. We're following a young girl who's just discovered after going to stay with her grandmother. I believe her mother's already died and her father has just died fairly recently. So she's gone to stay with her grandmother. And it turns out that she is descended from a line of witches. And she starts to like learn about these powers. There's a lot to do with her grandmother being this like old southern lady and wanting her to be a debutante, and about teaching her about the witchcraft that runs in the family. And I loved all the family stuff. I thought that was really good. I enjoyed that so much. And the romance just kept coming in, and I feel like it was going to start taking away from like the main plot line that we had going on that I was interested in. And it just got to a point, the romance has just fully put me off this book, sadly. So I did DNF it. I pushed with it for as long as I could, but every single time the romance kept coming in, it just killed it for me. And the other two books that I DNF'd are my soft DNFs. They are certainly not DNFs that I'm gonna not ever read them. I am probably gonna, one of them I'm definitely gonna read because I do own the book of it now, and the other one I'm just not sure about. So the one I'm not sure about is Gwen and Art Are Not in Love by Lex Croucher. I got about 85 pages into this. Again, it was a Yalk author, so I just wanted to try her out. And I wasn't really vibing with it. I just really wasn't in the mood for the kind of like rom-com shenanigans that we had going on. And I really didn't like Arthur. I was just struggling to be invested with the characters. So I've just put it aside for now. I may go back to it one day. I would like to try another Lex Croucher, but I don't know if she's for me, to be honest. I think maybe her comedy and stuff is just a little too breezy for me to really get into. And the other book is Tales of a Monstrous Heart by Jennifer Delaney. I actually got about 120 pages into this before the library needed the book back, and I have picked up a copy of my own book to finish this at some point, but I only got to about 120 pages before Yalk, and I was just too busy to reading other things to get back to it. So I'm definitely going to go back to this book at some point because I really enjoyed it. I'm not going to say too much about it because it is a book that you will eventually see again on this channel, but it is essentially a fantasy where this girl ends up getting into a mishap at school, and she ends up having to form a partnership with somebody who can help her train her magic. It's very like gothic. I think it's a romantasy as well, but yeah, I was just really enjoying it. All the side characters are really good, and I liked our main characters too, so I was having a good old time, and I will go back to it eventually when I can. So those are the DNFs. Now let's go into the other books that I read, the 10 books that I read in this month. Some of them were for Goodreads, so I'm just going to give the barest of reviews and skip over them because they will be having their own dedicated reviews in the Goodreads video, which will be coming out soon. It won't be out yet, but it is coming. So the first book of the month I read, a lot of these were all Yalk authors at the beginning of the month, to be honest. I read exclusively for Yalk prior to Yalk, and then after that I was mostly just focusing on the Goodreads books I had neglected. So the first one was How to Survive a Horror Movie by Scarlett Dunmore. This is a teen thriller that does have a supernatural bent. It is a horror, I guess, more so than a thriller, but it is also a murder mystery. So this was a really fun one, actually. I think I rated it like a mid-3 or so. It's not one I pick up again, but I really did have a grand old time whilst I was reading it. Basically, this is about this all-girls school that's in this island in the middle of nowhere, and our main character has kind of gone there to sort of like restart her life, and then people start dying. And her and her best friend, they kind of like room together, and they're both really big fans of horror movies. They're like, we know all the tropes, we know how to protect ourselves, we're gonna find the killer. And it doesn't go the way you expect it does, which I was quite happy about. I had a really good time with it. There was some actual really good body horror stuff, which I wasn't expecting, because basically our main character starts getting haunted by the ghosts of the girls who've died, which kind of like forced her to keep going in the investigation, even though everyone is trying to stop her investigating. Really fun book, good time, lots of like references to like Scream, all your typical kind of slasher movies. So if you're a big horror fan, I would recommend. I read The Invocations, which I'm obviously not going to talk about because I have already talked about it at length in my other wrap-up, but I did love this book. It was a 5-star. I had a great time with it. I then read a YA fantasy called The Dark Within Us by Jess Popplewell, and this was an interesting one because I can't say it was particularly good. I gave it maybe a low 3, I think, overall, but I really enjoyed it. For like a modern day YA fantasy, like obviously has a romance in it as well because they all do nowadays. This really reminded me of like something I would have read back in the early 2000s. It was giving me Twilight, it was giving me Vampire Diaries, all that kind of era in terms of like how the character dynamics were, in terms of our main character. So I actually really enjoyed it because it just felt like a really nostalgic read to me, which is hilarious because it's a brand new release. Basically, this is about a girl, of course, and she's struggling with herself, she's struggling in her life, and then she ends up meeting this like guy at a party who it turns out is a demon, and he kind of makes a deal with her, which involves the two of them going on a journey to reclaim something that she's lost. There's a lot of like twisted loyalties and you're not really sure who to trust, that kind of thing, but I really enjoyed like the journey aspect of this book and the character arc of our main character. She kind of learns a lot about herself, and even though there is a romance in this book, like it's very minimal, and we see a lot of just our main girl like just kind of like on her own a lot of the time and learning about herself and growing as a person and growing strong, which I really like to see. And getting to see like all these areas of the underworld was really fun as well. It had like a lot of humor in it, and it was just really quirky in like the parts of the underworld that we got to see. Like we got to see this little like diner like run by these two waitresses, and they were really fun characters. And yeah, I just had a good time with it. Basically not like amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but really gave me those like nostalgic old YA vibes. So that was just really nice to read. Then I do actually have a book finally physically here. A lot of these I say because I was reading them for Yelp. They were just like library books, but I do actually own this one, which is Let's Split Up by Bill Wood. This was a very fun one as well. This is another kind of horror thriller kind of thing. It's kind of very inspired by stuff like Scooby-Doo, like Buffy. In fact, one of the characters that comes in is called Buffy, and that is referenced, I believe, and it's also queer, which I really enjoyed. This is quite a quick read. I'm supposed to have read it really fast, but I think of all like the YA thrillers that I read for Yao, this is my favourite. It was just really well told in terms of the characters. I like how the characters were already friends, got to see that dynamic. I thought it was done well, and we got this new character coming in that was kind of upsetting the balance. And because like we know the tropes of horror movies, we know that it's the new person in town who's often a suspect, you do kind of suspect her as well. I wasn't crazy about the reveal of who it actually was, but I did generally had a really good fun time with it. They were just going around playing detective, playing Scooby-Doo, and it was fun. And there's going to be a sequel, so I'm definitely going to check that out when it comes up. I then read a bunch of stuff for Goodreads, so I'll just get those out of the way. I read Henry Winkler's memoir, Being Henry. Wasn't crazy on this one, unfortunately. I did listen to this via audiobook because he narrates it, but I didn't really know much about Henry Winkler anyway. I'd never seen, was it like Happy Days or something that he was in? I can't remember, but he was this really famous character called Fonzie. From that character, he got really famous because of it, and I'd never seen it, didn't really know who he was, and didn't really care, to be honest, a lot through this audiobook. I didn't really like him as a person, to be honest. So that was a bit of a miss for me. I then also read The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese. This is a absolute chunker of a historical novel. It's like 700, 800 pages or something. I've been like slowly listening to this since September, and I quite enjoyed it though, thankfully. I gave it probably a low 4. I'm still kind of differing a little bit on my rating for that one, but thankfully for such a long book, I did enjoy it. It is a multi-generational kind of story with a slight supernatural bent about this family that is in India, and there is this like strange curse on the family, which basically means that a lot of them tend to like drown, and it follows over a long period of time through different members of the family and them trying to find a cure for it. It was decent. I quite liked it. I then read 2 more for Goodreads. I was in the debut category at this point in time, so I read Monstrilio. The bookmark is gone. There it is. I read Monstrilio by Gerardo Samano Cordova. I liked this, but not as much as I thought I was going to, which is a shame. Again, my full review will be in Goodreads. It's a lot about grief, to be honest, this book, but it is basically about this couple whose young son dies, and the mother takes a piece of his lung and grows it into this feral creature called Monstrilio, who you can kind of see here. And it's just about them and this friend of theirs called Lena raising this new son that they have, except he's hard to raise. And there's a lot of like ethical dilemmas around it as well, and stuff about nature and nurture. And I did like it, but I didn't fully love it as much as I really thought I was going to, because I just found some of the characters kind of frustrating. And then the last Goodreads book I read was Inkblood Sister Scribe by Emma Tors. This was the 2nd place, I believe, in the debut category, and I really enjoyed this. This was a solid standalone fantasy. It's about books, which I always love. And yeah, it is basically about these 3 different characters. 2 of them are sisters, and one is this guy who's kind of linked to the magical books, and through various conspiracies and stuff, they end up kind of joining together to try and save the magical books. There's a lot more to it than that, but again, I want to keep it quite brief. But overall, I really enjoyed the characters in this. I found it so easy to read, so easy to get into. I was fully immersed the whole time. I gave this a 4.5, I think. I didn't say, I gave Monstrilio a low 4. But this was a 4.5. It wasn't quite a 5-star because I think there was just a little something missing that gave it that last little oomph. If you like magical books that are about magical books, really fun characters, kind of like races against time situations, it really gave me Book of Doors vibes. To be honest, I would actually recommend this because I hate the title, but it was a really good book. Okay, so the last 2 books I read, one was another YA horror that I read for Yalk, and that is The Haunting of Tyrese Walker by JP Rose. This is about a boy called Tyrese whose father had passed away a couple of months back now, and he's gone with his mother to Jamaica to visit his grandmother and his cousin, try and get him to heal basically from this, because he's obviously not dealing with his father's death very well. Like, he's kind of given up on life a little bit, and he's very angry and doesn't want anyone to talk about it. However, whilst he's there, he accidentally sort of uncovers something he shouldn't have and starts being haunted by this shadowy figure called the Shadow Man. Very original. And there's lots of like insect horror, and he ends up kind of like having to team up with his cousin and this other girl that they make friends with to try and work out exactly what the origin of this like urban legend is that is supposed to basically like take children and teenagers away, and they're after him now. And he's also kind of getting possessed through it, which was quite fun. I quite liked this. This is not a book that I would ever reread. I don't think I'd keep it, but I think for what it was doing, it was pretty good. I gave it a low 3, I want to say. I just wasn't quite invested enough. And I think, again, this is a case of if I'd been younger, I think I would have liked this. This definitely goes a little bit more young than like older YA. I think it dealt really well with like children dealing with grief and family grief and that kind of thing. So yeah, overall I did quite enjoy it. It just didn't quite hit the mark for me. And the final book I read was my book club book, which is one I've been really wanting to get to for a while, and it is a cozy sci-fi called Floating Hotel by Grace Curtis, who has written other stuff. I didn't realise. I thought this was her debut, but this is like her 2nd book. She's written this other book called Frontier, and she's got another one coming out next year. And this was kind of mixed, I think. I think everyone in the book club did enjoy it for what it was. Like, it is quite a short read. It's not too long, and basically we're just following a whole series of different characters across this like floating spaceship that through the course of one journey, traveling from one thing to another, there's a whole bunch of mysteries going on, and you're discovering stuff as you go along, as well as just also finding out about the various crew and people that are on the hotel. And overall, I really enjoyed this. It gave me Cautious Traveler's Guide to the Wasteland, but in space. But it didn't quite hit me as emotionally as I really hoped it was going to. So it wasn't a 5-star for me, which is a shame because I really was anticipating it being a 5-star. I think overall it's a low to mid 4. But I did really enjoy this. I think everyone else like had a good time with it. There was just something that didn't quite resonate with them that made it more than just a 4-star. But overall, like a really solid kind of sci-fi book. If you like stuff like Becky Chambers, if you want something that's just gonna be not chill, there are stakes, but there's really cool characters. I thought that was really interesting, giving me like Bakano vibes, I guess. It's like this anime where there's a whole bunch of different story characters going on. Overall, this was very fun. I would probably read more from this author. I wanted it to be a little bit more than it was. I think everyone was like, we were really enjoying it, but it ended a little bit too soon. The ending, I think, like, is kind of bittersweet. And I feel like people wanted something a little bit different and a little bit more from the ending. And that's where it kind of missed the mark a bit. But I was having a really good time with this prior to that. So that is all the books that I have read. The only thing left to do then is to go over my bingo board. I realise now this is like basically the penultimate bingo board of the year. I'm probably not going to hit some of these goals at this point because I'd have to be focusing on them for December. And I'm probably not gonna be, let's face it. So let's bring up the current board to see where we are at. So here is the board from last month. As you can see, there's still some that I've yet to complete. I have, however, absolutely smashed the horror thrillers. I've smashed sequels. We're close to completing sci-fi books. And I've done rainy day books. I'm kind of ignoring Illumicrate Prompt Card and BFF Controls My TBR now because I'm not getting around to doing prompt cards this year. I'm doing that next year. And I did have my BFF Control My TBR and I read most of the books. I read 3 or 4. I did put one aside because I wasn't vibing with it at the time. Now, I guess we're just going to see if I've managed to complete any others on this. I kind of suspect not, however. But let's go through it anyway. So I'm currently sitting at only 2 completed manga series. I don't think I'm going to complete any more before the end of the year, to be honest. I didn't read any manga in this month. I do have a pile of manga to read, but the issue is that I'm specifying complete series. All the series I'm currently reading are ongoing. Apart from Higurashi, that's the only one that is kind of complete. So I really don't think I'm going to be able to complete this, unfortunately. Unless I really get into a big manga mood in December, that ain't getting completed. Read 50% of my 2024 purchases. I'm really close as well, which is annoying. I'm at 40% from last month. I'm not sure where I'm at now. I bought a lot of Yalk, and I think that basically has screwed over my chance of reading 50%. So I don't think that's happening. I don't think that's happening either. 12 TBR veterans. I actually have a couple that I'm going to try and get to in December because they came from my jar. So I might be able to complete a few more of those in December, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to fully complete that either. I'm currently sitting at 6, so I'm like halfway, which isn't bad. I think if I can like do 1 or 2 more, I'll be happy. We've definitely smashed 10 horror or thriller books, but let's see where we're at now because I feel like we've added even more. So we were currently at 30. Let's see, what else did we read? We read How Does That Have a Horror Movie? The Invocations, Let's Split Up, The Haunting of Tyrese Walker, Monstrilio. I'm not counting the books I DNF. That's 5. So we're at 35 now for that. Safe to say I'm having no issues with that one. And then to read 10 sequels or more or books in a series. I don't know if I did this actually. I'm on 26. I think I mostly read standalones, however, this month. Yeah, no, they're all standalones that I read. So, I mean, some of them are probably going to be the first books in series, but the next book is not out yet, so I'm not going to count it. So yeah, we're still at 26. 10 sci-fi books. This got me to 10. I have finally completed that row, which means I have indeed got my bingo for that bottom line, which is great. And then finally, 10 rainy day books. I kind of smashed this last month, to be honest, but let me just have a look to see if there's any more I can add to this. No, I don't think so, actually. I think I've basically, yeah, I think they're all books that are not rainy day books. So that is, this is the final board now. I don't really see it changing that much before the end of the year, but we'll see how it goes in December. I've kind of given up on it, not gonna lie. I don't think I'm really aiming to complete it. I'm not gonna do the 50% purchases because I don't have time, and I'm reading a lot of library books in December because I've got the last Goodreads things to do. It was a good challenge. I didn't manage to complete it all, but I did manage to complete some of them, which was nice to see. I don't know if I'm going to do this next year or not, to be honest. I'm kind of debating because I have other things that I want to focus on next year. I don't know if I want to add like an extra layer of challenges on top of that. But that is it for my November wrap up. Let me know below if you've read some of those books. Also, let me know if you read Lex Croucher and you think I should give her another try, because I'm just really not sure about Lex Croucher. But yeah, that is it. If you're intrigued about what my experience was at YALC, I do have a whole little vlog that I created after I went to YALC, which has like my thoughts on the event, has some like vloggy stuff, and then also has like my haul of what I bought, the reason why I've wrecked my 50%. Like, this is a point in time that really I should have looked at this bingo board and been like, right, I'm setting my TBR for December based on completing this, but I'm not. So there we go. Okay, that is everything. As always, stay safe, stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!